I would like to now go to the part where you may question the candidates. You can pose a question to any one of the candidates, but we will ask all of the candidates to respond to it in a minute and a half. Now, is there anyone who wants to stand up and ask a question? Yes, you have to give your name and briefly.
Adam Kramer, and my question is, conservative actuarial and financial projections put the unfunded liability of our pension and future retiree health care at $130 billion. It's probably higher than that. That works out at a minimum to about $46,000 a household. What is a coherent plan to address that without throwing the state into complete financial chaos?
What are we going to...
How are we going to address that without throwing the state into complete financial chaos?
Pension.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to start with Mr. McKeon.
Sure, and thank you, Adam. I miss you up here. You were a candidate on the Republican ticket for Assembly the last time we had a chance.
No, that was me.
I'm Board of Education. I'm sorry. The pension fund, you know, in the last 3 years, we put more billions into the pension fund than we had in the 20 years before that. So obviously the state recognizes that that needs to be a priority as it relates to the aspects of the fund that need to be better collateralized. The truth is, in the long term, we have to indeed deal with pension reform. On a going forward basis, new employees should be in a position to deal with 401ks like, you know, the rest of us do here for the most part, you know, in private enterprise. And so the time has come that that needs to be transitioned. That's something that's done through the collective bargaining process and has begun as it relates to moving us forward in that direction. You know, hopefully, and you know, and I guess, you know, it wasn't the policies of from a national perspective and maybe an international perspective that has resulted in the funding and the investments of all of us being in the tank. But as the economic recovery continues under President Obama and Governor Corzine and the legislature, I think we'll see those investments come to the point of getting us close to flat again.
Mr. Brown?
Well, my goal as an assemblyman would be to make New Jersey financial status AAA. It should be as good as gold. And funding the state pension would be the top priority, because you really can't have a AAA rating and mess around with something as important as your debts and obligations. So once we could get New Jersey's spending under control, we would have to properly fund the state pensions, because the people who work for them deserve them, and they earned it. And we would be really remiss to try and cheat them out of that pension. That being said, we really have to turn to a less expensive system, a 401k system or some other type of system that somebody could think of that would work well for New Jersey. But it is very important, because it really is our reputation at stake. And if the state does not have a good reputation, it's not good in the investment community. We'll never be able to get that AAA rating, and then your interest rates that the state has to pay goes up. So it's very important that when we say something, we stick to it and we mean it, even though I have no backing from the unions. No union will give me money, no union will give me an endorsement, they won't support me. I still think it's very important that if they earn the money, they get paid what's due to them.
Thank you. Mr. Funt?
Pension reform, it's not a long-term problem, it is a crisis. Let me explain how it works here in New Jersey. Let me ask if you guys think this is a good idea. The way it's set up is it's a question of how much time you serve in your last 3 years of income. So you could be a part-time worker collecting maybe $1,000, $2,000 a year for 20 years, and then your last 3 years you get bumped up to some commission job, you get a salary of $200,000, and then your pension is based on $200,000 over 20 years. Paid for by us and our kids. That's just wrong. It's just the system in itself is wrong. And of course, It's unfunded because it's too easy to get into, and then it's managed by the state and the government, and what does the government run well? Anybody? Nothing. Okay, so here's what we need to do. We need to, now there are people who are been in the system for a long time that are at retirement or near retirement. We cannot do anything to harm those people. They're in the system. But for pretty much everyone else, we're going to have to start making drastic changes. Part-time employees just cannot be in the system. It's just wrong, and we all know that. And we need to really have critical reforms to make it sensible for those who have put in their time. It's got to be fair to us as well.
Ms. Jasey, can you address it?
Well, I would echo what Assemblyman McKeon says, and also remind you that prior to the recession that we're in, prior to our economy really going downhill, Governor Corzine had put more money back into the pension fund and I'm terrible with remembering numbers, I didn't write this one down, but he put more money back into the pension fund in the first 3 years of his being the governor than had been put in the fund for many years prior to that. So obviously he recognized it, the legislature recognized it. There also have already been reforms to the pension system, to new hires, and to the rules. You can no longer, for example, earn $1,000 or $2,000 a year and be in the pension system. That doesn't occur anymore. And these are reforms just from the time that I entered and that I've been learning about. So there is definitely recognition, bipartisan recognition in the Assembly and in the Senate and with the governor's office for the critical need to repay the money, to put the money in, to cover those people who have earned pensions. And I want to just quickly respond to the idea that commissioners make $200,000. They don't. And I will address that further later on. Is that all?
Yeah, about 30 seconds of rebuttal, and that's the point I was going to make. You know, to be rhetorical and say, and there's this commissioner that worked for $1,000 a year, and all of a sudden it's $200,000 and he's got a big pension. That has really nothing. It's a terrible thing. Shouldn't go on. Reforms are in place. Part-time employees no longer are in the pension system. They've gone to a 401k. But the bottom line is this: thankfully, people are living longer, and certain aspects of retirement ages, particularly for law enforcement, are as young as maybe 50, 55 years old, and they're living for another 30 and 40 years. In West Orange alone, we have more people that are retired than we do that are working anymore. That's where the problem came from. It comes from a good reason because people are living longer, but that's where the reforms need to come into place. Pensioners have to start paying.
Yes, and also that reminds me that the retirement age has been raised from 55 to 62. That was negotiated. Okay.